It wasn't pretty, but at least it was 3 points for Lazio. Finally, after a not very good run of form for Lazio, finally 3 points at home, and we've been struggling at home since the restart of the season without fans. So Lazio gets 3 points, very important. But the season, the new year has just started. There's a lot of points to recover, seeing how the other teams are performing. Alison McKenzie, how are you today? And do you think we saw some improvement from this match compared to Genoa performance?
Not a huge amount. I mean, we did in the sense that Lazio won the game, and I don't think they were quite as bad, and also the opposition were better. So you have to take all those things into account. To be honest, I'm amazed you didn't, in your introduction there, point out the fact that Lazio won, and because I wasn't there.
Well, it's so obvious.
You know, Fiorentina and Napoli, we win. I'm not at the stadium, and then Verona and Udinese, I managed to get there and we lose. So yeah, maybe it's for the best I don't go next Friday. Anyway, yeah. I mean, I thought it was okay. Obviously, a win's a win, and it's great to get results. And so one of the things we were complaining about last week was Lazio stopped being able to get results when they play badly. So I think that you have to be happy with it, really, in terms of taking a win. Because it's the first in 3 games now, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, last victory came last year, so it was a long time ago.
Well,
True facts.
True facts.
So before we go deeper in the analysis, I'm going to start an online petition to stop Alistair McKenzie going to the stadium to watch Lazio match, especially the derby. That's going to be my priority for the coming weeks. But Alistair, a little bit like against Genoa, 45 minutes, the first half, pretty good of Lazio. The second half, again, Lazio struggle. And I don't understand. Is it physical? Is it mentally? Is it something else? What's your opinion?
I actually think it's a really boring answer, but it's a combination of all these things together, because certainly we've had concerns about the physical condition of this team for a long time now, ever since they came back from the break. But I just think they're mentally, yes, but I also think there's tactically a bit of an issue here, because Lazio did the same thing in this game that they did against Genoa, which was they played pretty well up until they scored. And as soon as they're in front, they automatically become a reactive team, and they kind of drop deeper, look to counter-attack, but just aren't doing that effectively. And it's kind of, when we were ranting and being frustrated after the Genoa game about Inzaghi not changing anything and always doing the same thing, expecting a different result, it was the same thing again. And, right, yes, Fiorentina only pulled one back very late on, but still, I don't think any of us were very comfortable watching the end of this match. And I think a lot of that is down to the fact that they kind of, when they're in the advantage, when they have the advantage, they don't try and kind of control and dominate the game. They try and soak up the pressure and get another through that method instead. But I just don't have enough confidence that this team is really capable of soaking up pressure, especially against better teams. It has to be added to all the optimism about beating Fiorentina that this Fiorentina team aren't very good at scoring goals.
No, and there's something that really annoys me. Every single time Lazio score, you know that the next 5 minutes, the other team is going to have 2, 3, 4 chances. It happened against Genoa. It happened against Fiorentina. I don't know what happens to this team. It's like, okay, we score 5 minutes of distraction. You cannot allow this to happen at certain level, definitely. So I don't know. I think you're right. It's both mentally and physically. But this team have to improve, because otherwise it's going to be really, really tough to get back to the fighting for the Champions League position.
Something I thought was quite interesting, though, while I'm mentioning Inzaghi not changing things tactically, there was one thing I noticed Lazio did more effectively in this match, which was crossing the ball. And interestingly, we have complained about the wing-backs not being good enough with their delivery this season. But I thought it was quite interesting in this game that in the first half, the two biggest moments, the goal and Marusic hitting the post, both came from actually the centre-backs, Felipe and Acerbi, crossing to the wing-backs. So kind of using the wing-backs as targets in the box rather than the people to send the crosses into the box. And I thought that was, obviously that's how the goal came about. Lazzari, of all people, winning the header to set up Caicedo, which was a really, really good goal, by the way, very well worked. I think
true.
that tactically, that was quite encouraging. I thought that was different to what Lazio have been trying recently, and it was a lot more effective. So if we're looking for positives, I thought that was one.
Definitely. Let's not forget Strakosha finally started. I know a lot of our listeners have problems with Strakosha. So, Alistair, what do you think about his performance against Fiorentina?
Yeah, I thought he was okay. I think that we didn't learn anything we don't already know. It was the same old thing. He stopped a few shots that came in. He actually did really well when Patrick basically, threw a hand grenade at him with that back pass, and he actually dealt with that very well and didn't throw himself in and give away a penalty and remain calm in that situation. But it's just frustrating to see the way it's a bad pass from him that results in the penalty being given away at the end. And what I tweeted at the time was that, in a nutshell, is why Inzaghi's been picking Reina. Now, my point isn't that I think that's right. My point is that is why he's doing it, is that Reina won't do that so much. Yes, Reina's made the odd mistake, but in general is much better with his feet. So although it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to us when you're planning for the future to be picking someone who's, almost, 13 years older than Strakosha, this is fundamentally the reason why Strakosha is going to struggle. And that is the worst possible thing that could have happened to him yesterday, was to do that late on, because Inzaghi's not going to forget that error. And if he wasn't trusting him before, he's really not going to trust him now.
Yeah, I feel the same. Even though we have to say something. Yesterday, and you mentioned it before, Patrick was terrible. He came in for Luis Felipe and looked like his mind was somewhere else. And even Radu, when he came in, made a couple of mistakes. Now, we don't know if the Strakosha pass was Radu's mistake or only Strakosha's one. But then 5 minutes later, there's a long ball on the left side, and Radu is not watching the ball. He get... I don't remember who Fiorentina players got on the ball. That could be really dangerous. So we have to say that in the second half, our defenders were, I don't know what they were thinking about. And this obviously didn't help.
Well, that leads me to the next point, which is something I saw a lot of chat about yesterday. And it comes back to Strakosha as well, is the fact that if you have players like Patrick, who you can't really trust not to make catastrophic errors, if you have a goalkeeper like Strakosha you can't trust with the ball at his feet, then is Inzaghi just fundamentally getting his approach wrong by asking these players to play in a tactical strategy where a lot of it involves building play from the back and, drawing out the press from the opposition to then try and go along and open up more space in the other end of the pitch? I think tactically it's a good strategy that's worked for Lazio in the past, but at the moment it feels like, in terms of the risk-reward balance, the risk is much higher than we've had the reward. I think, like you were saying last week, Lazio are too predictable. Now everyone knows how they're going to play, so when they are drawing those teams out by playing it around the back, and when they go along after that to try and open up the space, teams are much better at closing down that space and not allowing Lazio to make those breakaways that they really thrive in.
Yes. As we are talking about defense, shall we talk about Denis Vavro coming back?
He's back.
He trained with the first squad today, and I think it was the first time.
That wasn't even the craziest thing that happened today, though. That Marici scored a hat-trick in the training match.
Yes. Yes, and Pereira scored twice. So we have to talk about Denis Vavro because he's back. But maybe let's start with Pereira because even though if he didn't play yesterday, he got some attention, right, Alistair? Because he was warming up with Murici. Last substitution, Inzaghi before said to Pereira, it looks like you're coming in, and then he changed his mind and put Murici in. It looks like Pereira didn't like the decision and went directly to the locker without saying nothing.
Yeah, and I think all of us who have been saying, and we've been saying it, but a lot of our listeners have been saying it as well, all of us have been calling for Pereira to play more and get more opportunities from Inzaghi. Perhaps we're getting an insight here as to why that's not been happening. Perhaps there's a character clash, he has the wrong attitude, Inzaghi doesn't want to reward him if he feels like he has kind of a right to be playing. Having said that, I was surprised he didn't play him at all. It would have been frustrating for Pereira to think when Ciro picked up that injury earlier in the week that he was going to start and then end up not playing at all. And it's not the first time we've seen things like this happen. If you remember, Immobile, Lulic, senior players have kicked up hissy fits at decisions made by Inzaghi. And I guess this is the drawback of maybe having a coach who's younger, who wants to be one of the guys, who is essentially like a friend and a mentor to these players as well as being their boss. But I don't think there's really any excuse for behaviour like that. You have to accept those decisions even if you don't like them.
But Alistair, I was surprised because Caicedo came off, and what does Inzaghi do? He brings in Akpa Pro and move Luis Alberto close to Ciro Immobile. That's the position where Andreas Pereira always played. And honestly, I didn't understand why he moved Luis Alberto closer to Ciro Immobile, especially when you have Andreas Pereira. We basically lose the regista in that situation. And I think that's one of the reasons why in the last minutes of the match, Fiorentina was attacking more and Lazio was struggling to react because Luis Alberto playing close to Immobile, I think he's not used to anymore. He was out of position in a certain way. So I can see Pereira saying, "Come on, that's my position, and you decide to move another player there instead of giving me a chance." Were you surprised about that?
Well, one of the comments we got after the game from Philip Pizzano was that Inzaghi's starting to look a lot more conservative with his coaching decisions. And I think he's spot on there. I think that is an incredibly conservative decision, really, and showing, in my opinion, a lot more respect to Fiorentina than they deserve from what we've seen from them so far this season, at least. Trying to find there was quite a good other comment. Yeah, Christopher Thomas said we made a team sitting 14th in the table look like 4th. So yeah, I mean, I just think that his decisions are being made for me more by fear than by, I don't know, by kind of rational thinking. I think he's often ruled by fear, as we know when it comes to taking off players on yellow cards immediately, having that kind of absolute terrifying nature when it comes to players on bookings. But sorry, you're going to say something.
The two things. Mine about Genoa, like Real Madrid, was better, but okay. I can understand your judge. And the second thing, okay, we talk about this yellow card every single time. So he took off Luis Felipe in the first half because he got a yellow card, but he didn't took off Escalante. He kept it like till the 81st minute, something like that. And he was on a yellow card, and he's in a very dangerous position, right? And I thought in the second half, Escalante didn't do pretty much nothing because he was scared to get a second yellow card. So why this yellow card rule of Inzaghi now it's not working for every single player? You had Cataldi or Akpa Pro as well could have played there. So you had option, but you decided to keep Escalante there even if he was already booked. So I don't know if what's going on. There are some weird decision that I struggle to understand.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I just think that he's kind of searching for the answer right now, and he's not really able to find it. One thing we should say, and it was another comment we got from Christopher Thomas, which we liked, is I reckon Luis Alberto's been listening to Lazio Lounge because he's playing so much better so far after all the negative comments in the last show. And you have to say he was better, wasn't he, Vittorio? So for all the criticism that he has come in for, that is at least one improvement, and perhaps part of the decision-making process that Inzaghi went through is just seeing that improvement from him, wanting to keep him on the pitch as much as possible, but then wanting to add a bit more bite and a bit more energy to that midfield.
Yes, but Alistair, I don't know if you agree or our listener agree. You can reach us on Twitter or our Facebook page to respond to me. I thought Luis Alberto had a terrific first half. We saw in the first 45 minutes the old Luis Alberto, the one of last year, and the assist he made to Ciro Immobile, the goal that has been disallowed for offside, very close offside, was the old style Luis Alberto Ciro Immobile connection. But, and this is what I'm asking you and our listener, I thought in the second half, Luis Alberto pretty much disappeared like he did against Genoa or in the other matches. So yes, in the first half, we saw the Luis Alberto we were used to see, but not in the second half. So, and I was reading other Lazio journalists on social media saying, Milinkovic Savic had a great match. What a terrific player he was yesterday. Amazing, unbelievable. And I was thinking, I don't remember nothing from Milinkovic Savic yesterday. Yes, the save that we were mentioning on the line, but to be honest, behind him there was Ciro Immobile. So if Milinkovic didn't touch it, there was still Ciro behind, and he could save that ball too. I think that Milinkovic Savic yesterday didn't play well at all. You can see that he was trying, but he made a lot of mistakes, especially when attacking. So I don't know. Maybe I'm too harsh, or maybe my TV was connected to another match. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it was one of those weird games where there were moments in the match where there was real quality on show. There were great moments for individual players. Like I already said, the first goal was brilliant. I thought the delivery was improved. The goal line clearance you mentioned was great, but at the same time, I think the overall performance wasn't great. So I think it would be a bit of a stretch to try and claim that any Lazio player was outstanding yesterday, to be honest, because we still lacked the same thing that Lazio have lacked throughout the season, really, which is a 90-minute performance. And I think that really now, to bring it forward, playing Parma on Sunday, that's massive, because that team is in complete disarray. They've just sacked Fabio Liverani, so it looks like Roberto D'Aversa is coming back, and yes, he may get the new manager bounce or whatever, but regardless of that, they've still lost 4 games in a row. They're still just above the relegation zone. They have tons of injuries. That's the kind of match that if Lazio are ever going to put in a 90-minute performance, it surely has to be against a team like Parma.
Yes, and they definitely, if I'm not wrong, they was able to lose against Torino, which is quite difficult this season. So this tells you how good the team is. On the other side, Alistair, there is another match coming after that. Do you think Lazio should rotate players, or because one of the questions they asked to Immobile yesterday after the match is, are you going to rest against Parma because there's another match a little bit more important for fans coming later? Faris, because Inzaghi didn't speak after the match, said we are only thinking about Parma, we're not thinking about the derby. Is it right? Is it the right choice to make?
I don't think Lazio are playing well enough at the moment to be able to say, we can rest players, we can rotate players to be fresh for the derby. I think getting 3 points Parma is still the same 3 points that we'll get if we beat Roma. And of course, emotionally, we think it's a lot more important to get result in the derby. And I think for the course of the season, it would be in terms of what it would mean. But I just think that given that there's going to be a 5-day gap rather than a 3-day gap, we should be okay to put out the full strength team anyway. Now, what I can't quite remember at the moment is which players are one game away from a suspension, if any. I know Lucas is coming back after being suspended tomorrow, but on Sunday, sorry, but I can't remember who is. If there's any key players in that position, then perhaps it would be worth being a bit more careful with them. But otherwise, in terms of fitness and so on, I think we need to put out the strongest team possible.
So there are Caicedo, Fares, Escalante, Hut.
Sorry, Fares, Escalante, and Hut.
Yes, and Caicedo.
Well, Fares won't be there anyway. Escalante probably won't play if Lucas is back. Hut is fine. We can play him. I don't care if he gets suspended.
Well, I think he's becoming very. I think he become very important though, because with Hut playing central defender, Acerbi can play on the left, and he's proved to be dangerous when attacking on that side. And I think he's covering much better than Rado. So having Hut is a good addition for Lazio, I think.
Yeah, no, I do think so as well. It's just
no, you said the opposite. So
after giving away the penalty, though, it is one of those things that just reminded me that he just isn't as reliable, and he never will be as we need him to. It was weird at the time. At the time, I thought it probably was, and then I watched the highlights back today, and I was thinking, that's quite soft, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
I just think we don't, with all the penalties being given now for all these handball rule changes and all that, I just think those kind of, I don't know, it was soft, but you can see why it's been given.
I mean, you can see him trying to. Grabbing his shirt and then thinking, no, I'm in the penalty box. But, luckily we got
the exact same thing happens at every corner kick, right? Like there's players running around at every corner, probably doing more contact than there was in that foul, but it just depends on the circumstances whether or not it's actually given as a foul. But anyway, thankfully it wasn't decisive. It's just frustrating because a clean sheet is such a rarity for Lazio this season that they came so close, and it was entirely self-inflicted that they didn't get it, and it's just maddening. It's an error from Strakosha and an error from Hut, 2 individual errors, and it just sums up the season defensively.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. Alistair, Keita and Candreva scored. I mean, what can we say?
Yeah, it was. And De Vrij as well. Actually, it was a strange day watching that game. It does go to show, and it's a reminder of how odd this season is probably going to be with results like that happening. And then Napoli Spezia was an absolutely crazy game as well. So of all of us who have been very downbeat about Lazio this season and the prospects and so on, I think that those results do go to show that, like we've already said, no teams are perfect this year, and if Lazio can find a way of getting some form again, they should be able to actually move up the table quite quickly.
Yes, I don't know if I am more disappointed that Lazio's playing badly, or seeing the other teams performing, or happy that the other team are struggling and sort of waiting Lazio to recover, if Lazio will ever recover. Said about Vavro, who's coming back. What about Felipe Anderson? Because how many Lazio fans said, bring back Felipe Anderson, bring him back, we miss him, etc. It looks like West Ham is bringing him back, because at Porto he's not playing at all. Do you think we should try and loan him for 6 months?
Well, the reason that Felipe Anderson left in the first place was that he wasn't really suited to Inzaghi's system, and he lost his place in the team and was really only being used as an impact sub at the time because he doesn't really play in a front two. So that's not really changed. Same thing again. Pedro Neto did an interview recently. I know we shouldn't. He's a name we don't like to talk about, but it was quite interesting. He was talked about how much he actually learned and how much he developed tactically working under Inzaghi at Lazio, and that it was actually a really productive part of his career, and it helped him to get out of Portugal and experience a new football culture. And I found it quite interesting reading that he was actually so upbeat about his memory of his time at Lazio, despite only playing, I think, 5 matches. But he seems to have found it helpful. It's just frustrating that these players... the thing that frustrates me the most really is that these players have essentially been moved on because they're wingers and they don't fit the system. But then one thing Lazio have done so much is sign wingers like Pereira, like Johnny, like Maricic, and turn them into different positions. So, but they're not willing to do that with those guys.
Yeah. About Pedro Neto, what surprised me is if you go and watch the celebration of the Coppa Italia victory, you see him shouting and singing like if he was the scorer of the match, right? And he didn't play a second in that final, but he's celebrating like he's one of the key members of the team. So probably he enjoyed the time there.
Yeah, you would though, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If I was there as like social media manager, I would be right in the middle.
Yeah, but he should be a player, not a social media manager, So, yeah, different points. Anyway.
Can I just tip the hat to Stefan Radu, who's now the Lazio's record Serie A appearance holder and chasing the all-time record pretty quickly as well. It's an interesting one, Vittorio, of who's going to get there first. Radu getting the appearance record or Immobile getting the goal record?
Well, I didn't like the performance yesterday from Radu. But yeah, this record is simply unbelievable. It's simply incredible. Considering that he arrived young to Lazio, but not that young. I mean, Lazio bought him, so it wasn't that he developed from the Primavera. So this makes it even more unbelievable.
And also considering how injury-prone he is, that record could have been a lot higher than it has been. And how many managers he's been through, and they've all wanted to keep him.
Yeah, I think that's the most incredible part because, a new manager comes and you're benched suddenly with no reason just because changing things. So that's unbelievable. But on the other side, I mean, Lazio starts always, when Ciro Immobile is playing, Lazio starts always 1-0 up. It's true that most of the time Lazio start 1-0 because we always allow a goal to the other team one way or another. But Ciro Immobile performance, and let's not forget, they were concerned he shouldn't play because he was injured. So, and I thought in the second half he was by far the best Lazio player. So, what can we say more about Ciro Immobile?
Not much. I mean, it's remarkable. 15 goals in his last 15 games. I mean, the thing is, nobody seems to have anything left to say about him. Everyone's changed focus elsewhere because
I have one.
It's just expected now. It's just completely expected that he's going to score every week. So people have, the stats websites, the newspapers, just nobody bothers even really mentioning it anymore because it's just such an inevitability. It's like I said last week, every Lazio game starts at 1-1 because we know Ciro will score, we know Lazio will concede. So thankfully yesterday Caicedo was able to get the other one.
Yeah, the only thing you can argue about Ciro Immobile, he didn't subscribe to our podcast.
Well, how do you know?
It didn't come out, so I think so. But we can ask him, right?
Hopefully, one of these days. The last thing I wanted to bring up today was just touching on this story that emerged earlier in the week about Tari and Lotito having an argument and over the transfer market and Lotito wanting to invest, interestingly, and Tari saying we've got enough. Now, it's quite. These kind of stories seem to come out quite a lot, whether it's Lotito and Inzaghi, whether it's Lotito and Tare, whether it's backroom staff, and they seem to always be denied or get the same response, which is we've worked together for a long time, sometimes we have disagreements, blah, blah, blah. Do you think there's anything really kind of going on here beyond the normal kind of Lotito arguing with everyone stuff?
Now, let's be honest. When it came out, the fact that Lotito wanted to invest and Tare no proves you that this is completely fake. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's the other way around. If it was Tare complaining that he wanted more money to invest and Lotito said no, I would have trusted. But the other way around, we know it's completely fake. Come on. Tare, anyway, said after the match yesterday that they haven't been nothing. But unfortunately, Alasdair, he also said Lulic is back, Fares is coming back, so we don't need a left winger. So winter transfer market for Lazio is over, or didn't even start, which I don't know. I struggle to accept it because Lulic is 34. He hadn't played one match since February of last year. We don't know how long it's going to take to get in shape to be able to play. If you are a top team, you don't take this risk. You go and sign a player. Or at least this is what I would do anyway.
Yeah, we cannot rely on Lulic. We cannot rely on anything with him because he's been out for so long, and at that age, in that position, there's just no way we can expect him to come back and immediately be the same player that he was when he left. No. Even then, I would argue, even if he does come back and he's at the same level, I would say we still need another player there because the succession planning long term, even if he does come back and play at that level, it's only going to be for another 6 months, 18 months at most. So Fares has been injury plagued since he arrived. He's not performed that well. I mean, to say that those two guys returning from injury is our winter transfer market, I have to say, is a little bit depressing.
Why little? It's a lot depressing.
It's very depressing.
The only thing is, I'm okay with that if we sign a under 22 left wing. But we're gonna see if it's gonna happen. I don't see it happening, but who knows? Who knows? And to close that, Vavro's back in the team. Do you think there's going to be some changes in a squad? I mean, Jaman Anderson should leave for Sena Lulic. But if Vavro's back, maybe we should find a place for him in the list. But I have no idea who could be removed from that.
Well, I mean, is Javan Anderson still on the list?
Yes, but Lulic is coming in, so he's taking that spot, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not easy. I mean, I guess it depends on if anyone is actually sold this month. I mean, they've ruled out now. Caicedo leaving has been ruled out from both sides now, Fiorentina and Lazio. So that seemed to be the most likely. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. But I just think that what Vavro gives you as well is that if Lazio do decide at any point in the coming months that they do want to switch to a back four, which I don't know why that would actually happen, given that Inzaghi is determined never to do that. But if they did, Vavro would actually be a good option to play in a back four because that's what he's used to. Don't forget that one of the biggest reasons he needed time to adapt was that he wasn't just moving country and moving league, he was moving from a back four to a back three. So yeah, I think that the Vavro thing has been dealt with so badly. I'd like to see him get another chance, but like you say, it's hard to see where and how.
Yeah, that's a bigger problem. I think he deserves another chance, but who gets off the list? I don't know. Maybe we're gonna talk about it in the next podcast after Parma Lazio. Hopefully, talking about another 3 points. Thanks again, Alasdair, for joining me. Thanks everybody for listening. Remember, reply to my questions. And if you want to subscribe to our podcast and you still didn't, you can find us on YouTube, Spreaker, Spotify, and please, if you want to support our podcast, you can do it on Patreon, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge, and on our store to buy our lovely merchandising. Thanks again, Alistair. Thanks again, everybody. And we're going to talk again after Parma Lazio. Goodbye.